Welcome to Muslims and Mental Health with Sister Heather, a groundbreaking program looking at mental health issues through the biopsychosocial spiritual paradigm.
Welcome to another episode of Muslims and Mental Health. Today we're going to be discussing Thanksgiving and how to be mindfully grateful. I'm going to be joined today by Sister Salva Chak, and before I get to her, I want to talk a little bit about what it is to have gratitude. According to the researcher Nathan DeWall, gratitude is more than just a feeling of good. It helps people become less aggressive by creating more empathy. It is an equal opportunity emotion. There are psychological, spiritual, physical, and interpersonal benefits to gratitude. Some examples of these are psychological, physical, interpersonal, spiritual, and to get into them more properly, I'd like to introduce you to Miss Salva Chak, and she is, Salva has her Master's of Public Health from the University of Southern California. She currently practices as a clinical pediatric nutritionist at Kaiser Permanente in San Francisco, helping guide children and their families in leading healthier lives. Salva studies holistic nutrition at Bowman College in Berkeley, California, and is trained in mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR, through the Center of Mindfulness at the University of Massachusetts. She teaches cultivating mindfulness at Tatleef Collective in San Francisco Bay Area and is the co-founder of Mindful Muslims, an organization integrating mindfulness into Islamic schools and communities. Please join me in welcoming Salva Chak. Good morning. Assalamu alaikum.
Good morning. Assalamu alaikum.
How are you this morning?
Doing very well, thank you.
So I want to get right into it and ask you, what is gratitude?
Yeah, so gratitude is recognizing something good in your life that comes from outside yourself. It's noticing the small or great pleasures. And so being a grateful person is having an attitude of seeing and acknowledging the good. That, knowing that there's always something to be grateful for, and even unpleasant situations at least can teach us something. And that's something to be grateful for. So gratitude is something that you can cultivate. It's a virtue and an attitude that we can actually tune into. And it begins with paying attention. So you pay attention to all the good things in your life, the good things happening around you. And, think about, did you wake up in a good mood? Did you eat a good breakfast? Was there someone at work or at the store especially kind to you this morning? Or was the weather nice today? But the thing about gratitude is that it doesn't always come naturally. So the negatives in our lives, like the disappointments or resentments, fears, sometimes they can take up more space of our attention than the positives. So, intentionally developing this attitude of gratitude helps us see the good and actually see these good things as gifts that we were fortunate to receive. And one of the most powerful things about gratitude is that, unlike other positive emotions, it actually acknowledges this connection that we have to others. So it's relational. So it reaches past the person experiencing it, and it involves other people. So practicing gratitude and acknowledging your appreciation for something can cause this positive ripple effect, which expands, far beyond yourself, which is an expression of gratitude is also an expression of love. So that, that can expand to your relationships, your family, your communities, and ultimately the global community.
That's beautiful. I want to circle back to something you said earlier in that response, which was about people being aware of it, and which leads us into our next question: what is mindfulness, and how they can be mindfully grateful. So because it sort of sounded like you were, going that direction, and maybe you can expand that a little bit more. What is mindfulness?
So mindfulness is a way of paying attention to our present experience as it's unfolding, without judging our experience or creating stories about it in any way. Mm-hmm. So as you mentioned, the very foundation of mindfulness is paying attention, just like that, and that's exactly how we start practicing gratitude. Mm-hmm. So at first this concept sounds really simple and almost common sense that we should all know how to do without practicing. But we're hearing so much about mindfulness practices lately. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of scientific research on this practice of mindfulness with overwhelming evidence that confirms major improvements in personal well-being. Mm-hmm. So the reason that it's not as simple as it sounds is that our minds are hardwired to wander and to create stories or judgments, usually based on our past experiences. Mm-hmm. And we get lost in these trains of thought. And so if we leave our mind to its own devices, it constantly gets caught up in replaying the past or projecting what may happen in the future. Mm-hmm. So this means that our minds are most often anywhere but here, meaning that we're rarely fully present. Mm-hmm. So what the mindfulness practice can do, or practicing paying attention, it's actually a tool that we can use to rewire ourselves to be more present and to our experience, and also to be less reactive. So with this, we can skillfully respond to life's ups and downs instead of the usual immediate knee-jerk reactions. Mm-hmm. And the other thing about mindfulness is, some people assume that meditation or mindful meditation is stopping your thoughts or getting rid of emotions. But it's about stepping back and seeing clearly, and where we can allow our thoughts to come and go without this over-involvement with them. Mm-hmm. And this, without the constant internal dialogue about
right.
them.
It's understanding them and being able to, use them in an understanding way. I myself recently developed a seminar called Language of Emotions, and where it's not a mindfulness seminar, but it's getting into exactly what you're talking about. How do we understand our emotions? How can we use them to benefit us on a daily basis, so that we're not just lacking, use of them mindfully, like you're describing. Yeah. And it's such a great thing when we know how to use them.
Yeah.
And understand them and know what's going on. It helps us, like you said, change the narrative of a repeating thought or a repeating story that may not be in our interest to keep repeating in our mind. Maybe that negative self-talk, or it could even be a positive story, but maybe it's not benefiting us anymore. Is that right?
Yeah, for sure.
So, how do you see religion and spirituality, and how are they different to you? And if I could just add in there as well, because sometimes in the Muslim community, when people hear the word mindfulness, their antennas go up. They're not sure what it is, and so, do you see any conflict for Muslims in practicing mindfulness?
I don't see any conflict at all, because again, I see it as a tool to help us. Really, it can actually make our prayer and our rituals more robust. By actually being present within those. Within those activities. It's a lot of times, our minds are wandering, and we're really not present to even our prayer or our ibadah, and in that way, I feel like it can really, really benefit us with any walk of life, really, in any part of religion. It really can help us just be present, and it's just a tool. I don't see it as a conflict. I see it as something that can strengthen our spirituality or religious practices as well. And so about the spirituality versus religion, or I actually see them as strengthening each other. I think there's a natural human inclination towards spirituality, towards believing in something greater than yourself. And I think each person has their own definition for what spirituality is. But the way I see it is that my spirituality is my faith in and my connection to my Creator. And religion is a discipline that strengthens that spirituality. So in the same way that we practice gratitude to strengthen that virtue within ourselves. So in my experience, I don't see them as mutually exclusive, but I see them as really intertwined, working together to make my life more rich with virtues such as gratitude or patience and so forth.
That's lovely. Thank you for sharing that. So, do you see a correlation between mental well-being and mindfulness and gratitude? I mean, I know that you're not coming on as a mental health expert, but I'm sure that there's some crossover. Do you make that connection yourself as well?
Yeah, definitely. There are many, many benefits of practicing mindfulness and gratitude. But I want to preface this by saying that mindfulness can't cure everything. So it's not a panacea. But having said that, there have been many rigorous studies on mindfulness practice, and they've shown many benefits. So the mindfulness practice has been proven to reduce stress levels and cortisol, which is the stress hormone, which can be harmful when elevated chronically. But by reducing the stress level, people feel less inclined to engage in unhealthy behaviors such as smoking or even overeating, as a way of coping with that stress. So, other research has found that it helps your immune system. It promotes faster healing and resistance to certain diseases, and as we touched on earlier, it can increase that inner strength. So people make healthier choices. So you are more present to what's in front of you, the choices that are in front of you. And one thing that I really like, being a nutritionist, is, it promotes mindful consumption of food for optimal health of body and mind. So,
which is really important as we're approaching Thanksgiving.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. So, you pay more attention, right, to everything. You can bring that attention to your food, and so you pay attention to what you're eating, how much, and even where that food is coming from. So, and you had mentioned a lot of the other benefits of mindfulness is, increasing empathy and improving sleep, even, and with gratitude, as they overlap a lot. So a lot of the benefits are the same, but grateful people, it's shown that they experience more joy, love, enthusiasm, and it can give you this. Practicing gratitude actually gives you this deep sense of goodness, that goodness exists, even in the face of negative circumstances.
And so we like to look at things from the biopsychosocial spiritual paradigm, and I hear you pulling out those pieces, and I just want to highlight them, again, because I love the fact that you brought up how stress affects one's immunity and our hormones. Because in the world of psychology, we know this to be, a biological reality of where if you do not reduce your stress and you are constantly producing those hormones in high volume, eventually the brain, its natural shutoff systems and the hippocampus and elsewhere get just overridden and they won't work anymore. And so they're in a constant state of stress. And some people get used to that and they just keep living in that state. But I hear you suggesting that there's an alternative way of living where you don't have to live that way and you can actually regulate that a bit better and in a natural way, so that it's not, you don't have to necessarily use chemicals to do that. You can do it in a very natural way using mindfulness. And at the same time, I hear you integrating the spiritual aspects and the social aspects and the psychological aspects as well. So it sounds like it's a really good holistic practice.
Yeah, there's so many benefits, and it really it doesn't cost anything, and it doesn't have side effects.
So this leads me into the next question I wanted to ask you, which is how can one go about living a mindfully gratitude life?
So so remember that the first step in creating mindfulness and gratitude, what they have in common is paying attention, right? So really, trying to bring that into your life is, fine-tuning that attention, that awareness. So one thing that we might bring our awareness to is our body. Mm-hmm. Just a sense of awareness of our lives unfolding in this physical body that we inhabit. And, we can do this by paying attention to walking, sitting, eating, any type of movement, or bringing attention to our breath. So mindfulness of breath is not just a breathing exercise. It's actually noticing that we're breathing. And if we're able to breathe, that means we're alive. Mm-hmm. And so really being aware of how spectacular breathing is and the beauty that we're doing so in this moment, more or less effortlessly. Mm-hmm. And so bringing your awareness to that can really anchor us in this moment, right here, right now. And, other simple acts that you can bring into your life is being really mindful and aware of simple acts like folding your clothes or doing the dishes. These can also be done mindfully to anchor us in the here and now. So, really feeling the water on your hands, noticing the temperature, noticing all the movements that go into this act that we usually don't pay too much attention to, is just a great way to bring, that practice of mindfulness into play in our lives. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And just hearing you and thinking about the clinicians in our audience and those people considering getting therapy, and hearing you use the word anchoring is it brought to mind so many things for me, because many of our existential theories, like Irving Yalom's theory or logotherapy and Rollo May, they have techniques within them called, like there's an anchoring technique. And so people who may have very narrow views of what therapy is can know that we actually use some of these techniques in therapy. If they like what they're hearing of what you're saying about mindfulness, they can actually find a therapist who will help them with techniques like this. And I think that's so great that you're exposing the world to something more than what they traditionally understood along these lines. Yeah. And so switching gears just a little bit, have you had any of your own personal struggles with wellness?
Yeah, so about a couple years ago, my right lung spontaneously collapsed, and I was rushed to the emergency room. And at that time, I really didn't know what to make of this, because I never had any issues before with my health. I was this young, active, very health conscious person. And before I knew it, I was admitted to the hospital with a chest tube inserted through my ribs and hooked to machines to help stabilize my lung and help me breathe. And I consequently spent the next 5 months in and out of the hospital with 2 major lung surgeries, with numerous complications, and I spent 2 months with a chest tube in to keep my lung stable. And to keep it from collapsing, but my lung was not responsive to all these procedures, and it kept collapsing again and again. And this completely baffled my surgeons and specialists. But at the end of that period, thank God, the last surgery 5 months after my first admission, stabilized my lung. And, in the middle of all of this happening, I had loved ones, out of genuine worry and possibly confusion, ask me, why is this happening to you? And the beautiful thing that I realized from those questions was that at first I didn't have an answer. I didn't know why. But the more important thing I realized was that I didn't need an answer. And, not being in control of what was happening taught me a lot about relying on God and the concept of tawakkul, reliance on God. And it brought me closer to my Creator. So every time I was, readmitted to the hospital, I remember thinking, taking a deep breath and saying, there's something I haven't learned yet. God wants me to learn something. And, I wanted to know what it was, and that gave me just that curiosity, I guess, gave me the strength to go into another procedure. And, during that time, I had to work really hard at expanding my lungs, and before this, I never really thought too much about my lungs or the simple act of breathing, and until I had to, right? And so this experience, really shook me awake to the fact that I am breathing, and this deep sense of gratitude for my lungs and for my breath was born. And so in my recovery is when I started practicing mindfulness. And, it helped a lot with my pain. I was having a lot of pain, and it helped, focus my attention, turn towards that pain, and I learned to deal with it. And
so it sounds like it was a process, though. It wasn't just immediate. And I'm sure you must have been scared, at least initially. Is that correct? Or
yeah, it was very, very shocking, right? And I didn't know why, didn't know what was happening, and it was that much scarier that my physicians didn't know either, and to this day we still don't know, why, and so it kind of, built this, knowing inside of me that I don't need to know, and, things are going to happen, and we can't change it, but we can change how we respond, and, and we can change how it occurs to us, so that's one thing that I really, really got from that experience. It was, very unpleasant, but I really got that knowing and that knowledge of, okay, and the other thing was it woke me up to things that I took for granted, like my breath and, things that we don't notice on a day-to-day basis, really. But
so it sounds like you took something that was scary, maybe even traumatizing at times, and turned it into a positive learning experience, and now are benefiting more from having had it than what it may have initially seemed.
Yeah, alhamdulillah, I thank God for that. That I didn't spiral into, despair or, where it can easily get there, and, I count myself really lucky to, fortunate to have come out of this healthy and strong. But it definitely changed my outlook on life, because I had no other choice, and it's that way that sometimes, God pulls you in the direction that He wants you to be,
And you already had something internal there to have taken it in the direction you did. So it kind of tapped into your internal strength.
Yeah, I like to think so. And
so I really want to ask you some more questions, but we have to take a brief break for our sponsors, and then we'll come right back.
Hi, welcome to Adelante. This is Adelante Recovery, and my name is Yvette Kuglin, and I'm part of the staff.
Adelante Recovery Center has helped people in dual diagnosis for 5 years. We accept most PPO insurances and provide luxury accommodations and 24-hour support. To speak with an admissions counselor, call 1-888-242-4450.
A lot of time we don't even know what's wrong with us, and sometimes we need to get away to figure that out. So if you want to go for a little retreat out in Corona Del Mar, which is a confidential location, we're here to help. So we're only a phone call away. Thank you.
Welcome back to another episode of Muslims and Mental Health. Today we are discussing Thanksgiving and how we can all be more mindfully grateful with Salva Chak. So welcome back, and I want to move into our next question, which is what are any recommendations or advice you would give Muslims and others on living a more grateful and or mindful life?
I would say be with nature every day, if possible. If you live in a big city, this can be just going to the rooftop and sitting under the stars, or soaking in the moonlight, or taking a walk. Just connecting with nature brings about this sense of wonder and awe, gratitude and humility before the creator of this amazing universe. And I think about it, how can you not feel this, how can you not feel amazed or awestruck when you look up at this, a huge redwood tree that's been there, for hundreds of years, or even looking at, at the details of a single leaf, with its veins and colors and this whole system that's here for us to marvel at.
It's so funny that you mentioned that, because I just recently was talking to a friend about that. For a lot of people who are in school or, young college, people, they are getting close to the end of their semester. And I had just said to a friend recently myself, because we were toward the end of our semester, our academic semester as well. And I said, I just want to go and stare at a leaf for an hour and not have to worry about all the other things that are going on,
Yeah, it's really amazing. It's like, if you really look at that leaf, right? It's just amazing, this whole system. And it's a really good way to open your heart, to even more awareness and gratitude for it. But one thing I would add to that, looking at the leaf or the tree, is be intentional about expressing that gratitude to God. And remembering God when you're out in nature. Saying Subhanallah or Alhamdulillah, meaning all glory to God, or all praises to God. That, like, coupling that, when you are in nature and really practicing that, has this humbling effect and positive effect on our hearts.
A question I wanted to ask you, how some people use the dhikr beads, the remembrance beads. Would you consider that a type of mindfulness?
Oh, definitely. Even the movement of each bead, that's definitely, you're using your awareness, and really being aware of the beads and of what you're saying, and really, coupling that with the gratitude and the remembrance of God. Yeah, it's definitely a practice in mindfulness. So many things can be a practice in mindfulness as long as we remember to bring our attention back. Over and over, our minds are going to wander, but we just need to bring it back. Yeah.
So circling back to the idea of Thanksgiving, is there anything else you would like to add, particularly about mindfulness and Thanksgiving?
Just being mindful and being grateful for Thanksgiving is usually a time where, we spend with family. And, not worrying about all the little details, this type of food or that type of food, I wanted this, or, really focusing on that love and being aware and being present to your family, that may have traveled or come long distances to see you, is really be present and listen, and show that appreciation for each other during this time.
And so, is there anything else about mindfulness that we haven't discussed today that you want to mention? Or gratitude? Or being mindfully grateful?
Yeah, there's a lot. But there's, it's really beautiful that, what mindfulness does for us when we practice it regularly. Even if you face a difficult situation or a stressful one, we can stop. It gives us a pause. This pause between what happens and our reaction to it. So we can actually, instead of react, we can respond skillfully. So it's I like to look at it as this space or this cushion between that reactivity. So we're not running away from situations. We're not avoiding things. We're actually meeting them skillfully with equanimity and acceptance. Because whether we like something or we don't is besides the point. The fact is that it's happening, and we want to skillfully deal with what comes up in life. So again, we can't change everything that happens, but we can definitely work at changing the way it occurs to us.
I think that's a really good point, because there's been so much focus on happiness, right? That we often forget that life is not always about happiness, or that we're not necessarily guaranteed happiness in this dunya. So I think that's a really good point that you bring up, to be aware and mindful of whatever it is, and taking it as it is a really important concept especially for Muslims.
Yeah, and coupling that with gratitude practices, it's really one of the attitudinal foundations for mindfulness, is being grateful for what we have, and one practice I'd like to add is consider gratitude journaling. Writing down a few things. It doesn't have to be a long list of things. It can just be one thing, but be specific about why you're grateful for that one thing. Write down details and write down why you're grateful and specifically what you're grateful for. If you're grateful for somebody in your life, write down why, what they did for you, how that made you feel. And that really deepens your general sense of gratitude.
So I want to circle back to the beginning where I mentioned that you do some teaching with the Tatlif Collective. And do you also do some teaching apart from that as well, right?
Yeah. So
I'm wondering, how could people avail themselves of your teaching, or if they wanted to contact you about getting training in mindfulness, how would they do that?
Yeah, so through this experience, I actually created a organization called Mindful Muslims to really underline that mindfulness is inherently in the foundation of Islam, and mindfulness and meditation is also something that we can be proud of as Muslims, and it's something that isn't separate from Islam. It's really part of that awareness, and it's really part of our tradition. And we can definitely contact us on our website. It's www.mindfulmuslims.com, or Instagram, or we put up mindful quotes and Islamic quotes and research. So if you want to hear more about the research or any activities planned, you can check out our Facebook page as well.
And the Facebook page would be Mindful Muslims as well? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, I appreciate all that you've shared with us today about mindfulness and being mindfully grateful and gratitude. I need to transition now to some of our fun questions that we like to ask our interviewers. And so I'll start with, who is your favorite Muslim hero, if you have one, and why?
So my Muslim heroine is Khadija radiallahu anha, the Prophet's wife and the first convert to Islam. So the reason I love her so much is she was this powerful and successful businesswoman, and she really encapsulated grace and strength with her unwavering support of the Prophet, peace be upon him.
And what is your favorite concept in Islam, and why?
The concept of sincere intention, so niyyah, would have to be my favorite Islamic concept. And I learned that the Arabic word niyyah also means seed. And just as any plant begins with a seed, every action begins as an intention. And so since intentions are spoken from our hearts, our actions also begin there. So to me, this speaks to the power of our intentions and how all acts of love or otherwise spring from our intentions. And this is really beautiful to me, because just knowing that we can choose to nurture positivity through good intentions.
And that we are judged more on our intentions, than anything.
Yes.
Yeah. That's amazing. Beautiful concept. And what is your favorite word, and why?
So my favorite word is ojalá. It's actually a Spanish word. Yeah, so in English it means hopefully or God willing. And so I learned this word when I was studying abroad in Spain. Its root is why I love it so much, because it comes from the Arabic inshallah or ya Allah.
Can you say it one more time, the word?
Ojalá.
Oh, yeah. That's beautiful.
So it's Ojala.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Well, thank you again. And inshallah, I look forward to seeing you possibly again sometime.
Yes.
And again, if you're interested in availing yourself of Sister Salva's work, you can do so at www.mindfulmuslims.org or www.mindfulmuslims.com. And this concludes another episode of Muslims and Mental Health. As always, we look forward to your comments, your feedback, your concerns, and you can reach us at nafshealertherapy@gmail.com. That's NAFSHEALER therapy@gmail.com. And you can join us on our adjunctive website, where we will have links to Sister Salva's website at www.nafshealertherapy.wordpress.com. Thank you for joining us.